Welcome to Education Today, the guest teacher edition. I'm your host, Solanke. After 15 years as a secondary English teacher, I stepped away from the classroom and took a 1-year hiatus. Now I'm back in a completely new capacity. I'm a substitute teacher, and I get to experience teaching all grade levels and subjects from kindergarten to 12th grade. Join me as I document my journey, seeing education through a brand new lens and a different angle. Welcome back to Guest Teacher. So what happened this week? Let me see. I was in a high school and I had an amazing conversation. I think the two of us were speaking for most of the period with a young man who was kind of drawn to me, wanted to talk to me when he found out that I was European, that I grew up in Europe. I think just wanted a connection with somebody else international. His background was very interesting. His background was Russian, Ukrainian, Jewish. One parent was Russian, one parent was Ukrainian, and the father, I remember, had Jewish heritage, but he was a cultural Jew. He wasn't a practicing Jew. Because I remember that I'd asked the boy, do you go to, have you been to temple? Do you practice this? Do you practice that? But no, they weren't practicing Jews, but he has that heritage. It's such an interesting heritage. So English was not his first language. Russian was his first language. And I didn't catch on to that at first, but then after he told me that I could hear his accent. But he was determined to perfect his English. And he said, that he enjoyed speaking to me because he liked the way that I was speaking English. And he wanted to perfect his English. And it was such a great conversation. He was very interested in insurance and business. He said his father was in that industry and his older brother was getting into that. And he was talking to me about things like insurance, life insurance and term life. He was telling me the difference between, term life versus, I can't remember. He's saying one of them is you get it from the time you're born, and the other one is just as you're older. And he was very interested in like being an entrepreneur. I remember how the conversation really started. That he had a book, and the book was called something like so I don't remember the title. It was something about making your bed and other ways to be successful in life. So I asked him, "Did you choose that book? You're reading that book?" He said, "Yeah." You selected that book, and he was explaining, "Oh yes, the person who wrote it was a military person." And I said, "Have you been making your bed?" He said, "Oh yeah, I've been making my bed every morning." And he was telling me about the book and how the book was changing his life. He was somebody who just wanted to be very disciplined, wanted to have that entrepreneurial spirit, was determined to perfect his English and graduate from high school and go into business and insurance. And he knew a lot about the world. He knew a lot about the world. We talked a lot about politics, and not like controversial politics that's going on right now, what's happening in the Middle East, but just like the way that Europe works, the way the economy works, things like that. I just love that he, as somebody who was an immigrant to this country, that he was just more aware of the world than a lot of his peers. He talked a lot about the educational system in different places. So we talked about the educational system in Russia, which is where he'd started his education. We talked about the education system in England, in the UK, which is where I went to school. And he talked about Canada also. He'd spent some time in Canada, and he was talking about how he prefers those systems to the one in the US. And he was telling me about the things he doesn't like about the US educational system and how he believes that it's kind of dumbed down. This is his idea, his thoughts, and how it isn't as rigorous as the one in Russia, and how a D is passing here. And he said in Russia, like a B is barely passing, but here you can pass a course in a middle school or high school with a D, although it will affect your GPA in high school, but technically you passed the course. And he was like, you get a B in Russia, you're not passing. That's not passing. A B, not a D. Yeah. And then there was another student in that same school that same day, another period, who was, when he heard my accent, he was asking me a lot of questions about the UK. And the questions he was asking me, the things he was saying were very different to what I hear the standard corny stereotypical things that I hear students ask me or tell me about the UK. And he had an awareness of that. Like he asked me, okay, so you're from the UK. Yes, yeah, and you're black. He said, okay, so then where are you actually from? Like your what is your heritage? Is it is it West Indian or is it African? And I was like, that is so cool that you know that. That is so cool that you know that. I said a lot of people don't even like acknowledge the fact. A lot of people in the UK, they have a hard time comprehending the fact that there are black people in Britain. So they'll ask me instead, am I Jamaican? Because to them, they can't fathom the fact that I could be British because I'm black. But he asked me that question, and he asked me some other questions, and I asked him, how do you know about this culture of Black Britain? He said, oh, he talks to girls online, like DMs of British girls. He seems to have this thing for British girls. He said he likes the accent. That's why he likes the accent. So, I think he watches TikTok videos too. But he said he talks to a lot of UK girls online. And because of that, he learned a lot about Black British culture. It was very impressive. I was very impressed with the questions that he was asking. And then that same week, in another high school, I had a student who was from the Bahamas, and I had just recently come back from the Bahamas. I went on a cruise and went to Nassau. And I've also been to Freeport another time. So we had a great She was so excited that I was from the UK, and we were talking about colonization and the 50th anniversary of Bahamas's independence from the UK, and how the British influence is still heavily seen and felt in the UK. I was talking about the police uniforms; they're very British as opposed to like American looking in the Bahamas. It was a great conversation, and I actually bumped into her again the next time I was at the school, and she came to talk to me. But we talked about a lot of things. It was a great conversation. So those were three students who I had these amazing conversations with them about the world outside of America. And like the Bahamian student, she was talking about her experience living in the Bahamas and then her experience coming to America and the differences in the education system, just like the boy who was Russian and Ukrainian, and the differences in the educational system. Then there was another girl in the same class, the Bahamian student, who said, "You're from England?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "That's so cool." I said, "Why? What makes it cool? Why is it cool?" She said, "I don't know. I can't even imagine that there's a whole other world, a whole other side of the world." She said, "I can't even imagine that." And I just thought, I said to her, I said, "Okay, we need to get you a passport. We need to get you a I'm actually astounded. I'm not astounded. I think I'm used to it by now. There are so many, I've had so many students in Florida who, I mean, I guess they're young still. You know, when you're young, you don't necessarily travel a lot outside of your little sphere. There's a lot of students that I've encountered over the past 16, 17 years in education in Florida who either haven't left Florida or have gone as far as Georgia. Like that's it. Um, some of them will go on a cruise to like Cancun, Mexico, or something like that, Cozumel, Mexico, maybe the Bahamas. Um, Occasionally you'll have some, not occasionally, there are some who go to other states, especially if they have families there. Um, but a lot of students haven't left the country, and a lot of adults haven't left the country. A lot of adults do not own passports, and you go on what's called a closed cruise, from America to the Bahamas to Jamaica to Cozumel, Mexico, to other places in the Caribbean. You don't even need a passport. You can use a birth certificate, an American birth certificate. And then, of course, we don't need passports to travel to Alaska, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, because they're all part of America. So you are going on a plane to go to Hawaii, and all Puerto Rico, and yet you don't need a passport. It's pretty cool. And you can kind of understand why a lot of people don't have passports, but at the same time, I think that kind of hinders people from getting a passport because they can go to all these places without needing one. But back to the girl's comment, she said she couldn't even imagine that there's a whole other side of the world. And I was thinking about the conversations that I had with those kids who, like, one of them hadn't even left the country, but he had exposure to other countries and other cultures through the internet. So the internet is opening the world up to people, as we've known since it first started to know about the internet when I was getting out of college in '96. That's when I was aware of the internet. So the internet is also opening up the world to students, but there is just such a huge difference in the conversations that you can have with students who haven't been anywhere and aren't aware of other cultures versus students who either are from other places, have been to other places, or have immersed themselves or have an interest in other cultures through the internet. There's a lot of students, especially girls, who take an interest in Japan, whether it's because of the K-pop music or whatever they take. And they're like this week, I had a student who had a book, Learn Japanese, and I was asking her about it. I was asking if she does Duolingo also. She said, yeah, but Duolingo is limited to 200 words or something like that. So she said, so I found this book because I want to learn Japanese. So I've encountered quite a few students who are interested in Asia, especially in Japan, and want to learn Japanese or want to one day go there. But those students who immerse themselves in those other cultures, the conversations you have with them is so deep and broader than the conversations you have with students who either haven't been anywhere or are not from anywhere or haven't taken an interest in the world. Exposure to the world and to different cultures is part of an education. And those kids who have that exposure, even if it's just through talking to other people in other countries on the internet, um, they are smarter. They are smarter. They know how the world works in terms of things like economy, immigration, politics. So yeah, exposure to the world is really important for students. You see it in the conversations you can have and the depth of the conversations you can have with students who have that exposure versus students who don't. So I subbed in a class this week, and a girl said she'd forgotten her AirPods in another classroom. Could she go retrieve them? Yes, you can go retrieve them because I figured it. If I don't let her go, somebody's going to steal them in this school. Here's the pass. Go. This is towards the beginning of class. Well, she never came back. Then the teacher returned. The teacher returned because the teacher was not absent. The teacher was proctoring a test. And I said, this girl left. She never came back. So basically, she skipped the class and she took your pass. Teacher was livid about her pass. I need my pass. I need my pass. Where is my pass? Why did she take my pass? Um, I hung around in her class for a bit because I had nothing else to do, even though she was back. And I overheard a conversation where she was telling somebody about this girl and how she had to write her up because she skipped class. She hoodwinked the substitute, disappeared, never came back, and she took a pass. So I had to write her up. This is not the first time, she was saying. She's a good kid, but we got to get a handle on this. I just wanted to let you know. It was a little while before I realized because it was so conversational and so intimate almost that it took me a while to realize that she was talking to the girl's mother. And after the phone call, I was like, was that the girl's mom you were talking to? She said, yeah. And I was like, it was like she was talking to a colleague who's a good friend. And I was like, wow, what a great relationship this teacher has with his parent. And I was never able to figure out, as a classroom teacher, calling parents during class. I mean, to be fair, this teacher, while she was making this call, the class that she had was like a credit recovery class. So kids were kind of independent on laptops. This is high school, getting caught up on other classes. So to be fair, she was not up there teaching. But she was able to do that during class, which I was never able to figure out. Um, I always had to do it after class on my conference period or after school or before school. I never figured out trying to multitask, stepping outside to call parents and trying to regulate the classroom and keep kids on task and teach and everything. But I was just blown away by the relationship that this teacher had with this parent, that I thought she was talking to a colleague who was a good friend. And when I mentioned that, she did say, yeah, she's had the kid for 2 years, so the relationship has that time to grow. But her manner was just, I wish that she could give a masterclass to other teachers, including myself, about building relationships with parents. Because I thought I was doing something, but I wasn't doing anything. Because this lady was doing something. The tone, the relationship she's clearly built up over the school year with this parent, so that she can have this conversation without it being negative. And still, obviously, she has to tell her what her daughter did and that she has a referral now. But it was just like, we need to work together to keep her on task. She's a great kid. She has a great ability, but we got to get her on task because she keeps doing these things. And it was just, I just really enjoyed hearing that conversation. The only thing I will say is that I don't know how I felt about the fact that the conversation was going on in the class while other students were around. Although names of students, the name of the student may not have been revealed, it may have been obvious to some students. So that was the only thing that I thought, as a privacy thing, that should probably happen in private and not in front of other students. But besides that, I just was in awe of the way she was able to build rapport with this parent so that they became a team in dealing with this kid's behavior. Great job, teacher. I had a 10th grade student who was bragging to the class, telling everybody his business about how his mom was upset with him and his mom called him a certain name. I was like, your mother called you that name? He said, yeah. He said, well, she kind of has a right to. And I was like, why? And he was bragging to everybody about what he did. And what he did was, and everybody was talking about it. Everyone seemed to know his business. Maybe this is normal for 10th grade boys who are in this situation. But to me, it seems like a private affair. He was telling everybody that he was 85%, was very specific, 85% positive that I don't know if it's girlfriend or girl he was involved with, is expecting. I said, you're 85%. Why are you telling people? Why are you telling people if you're 85%? And by the way, do you have a job? He's 10th grade. No, he didn't have a job. Why are you bragging about this? And like I said, maybe this is normal for 10th grade boys. I would think it would be a privacy issue. And then the girl's name is being out there. Everybody knows who the girl is. Again, 10th grade boy, 16 years old. Maybe that's the behavior of a 16-year-old whose brain is not completely developed. So I was in a middle school. There was a girl it was first period. So it's like, let's start the day off good. It was first period. And every time you go to a school as a substitute, they say, don't hesitate to call the office if there are any issues. If a student gives you a hard time, don't hesitate. They always say that. But I'm always like, oh, I'll just deal with it. So unless if it's extreme. And usually, so you have kids who are just a little off the chains. It's like, first thing in the morning, why are you off the chain? Just calm down. Or a kid who's just being how do they see, or just disruptive. And those are I guess it depends on your tolerance. Everyone has a different tolerance, and usually my tolerance is pretty high, and I'll just keep reminding them that. And it's in middle and high school. You're literally with them for like 50 minutes to 1 hour, and then they move on to the next class. It's like, you can deal with this. But that one day, I could not deal with it. It was first thing in the morning. It was first period, and this child was doing just aggravating stuff. Passing cookies around. Why are you passing cookies around? You're supposed to be doing work. But now everybody in the class is involved in this espionage of passing the cookies from person to person from this girl. Pass it across the room. It's, oh my goodness. And I know if your teacher were here, because I'm looking around this classroom, it's neat, it's tidy. I know it's one thing to be eating the school's breakfast in the classroom in the middle school first thing in the morning. I've seen that. That's, your bus gets there late, you need breakfast. Rather than miss class and sit in the cafeteria and eat it, you can eat it in the classroom. But this is different. You're getting out cookies, opening the packet, and you're passing them from person to person. And I'm telling you to stop. And every 5 minutes, the cookies are back out again. And you think I'm blind, I can't see it. And it's just causing a ruckus. No, we're not doing this. Then there were other things that she was doing as well. My tolerance was getting low because I'm trying to correct and get back on task. So my tolerance is getting low, and I just feel like, you know what? They always say call the office. So call the office. And this girl is swinging in. I've never seen anyone do what she's doing. Instead of swinging in the chair, because middle school's always swinging in their chair. I'm thinking, you're going to fall and hit your head. Stop. No, she's sitting in a chair, but she's swinging the desk back and forth. And I'm like, what is going on here? And it's first thing in the morning. You're swinging the desk back and forth, like lifting it off the floor. It was just too much. So I'm thinking, call the office. You don't have to sit here. Let her go sit in another classroom. Call the office. I called the office and somebody came to have her removed. I said, don't forget your cookies. Because I had taken the cookies because I had my last straw and I'd put them on top of a cabinet. She said, oh, you think I can't reach them? I said, I know you can reach them. I just want them out of sight and out of mind so you can focus on your assignment and stop passing cookies around to everyone and making a mess as well. When she was leaving, when the lady came to get her, she was like, oh, you again. She said, yeah, I'm ready. Let me go. I said, don't forget your cookies. And then the lady was like, make sure those things go in the bag. Put them in your bag. They shouldn't even be out, which is what I was telling her. Put them in your bag. And she kept getting them back out. And she left. And I was just like, oh. And the other kids were like, oh, miss, she's usually worse than that, actually. This was kind of mild. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, she's usually way worse. This was mild. And I said, wow, that is crazy. I don't think this girl is getting any discipline at home. That's crazy. I said a comment that I probably shouldn't have said. I said, that's why teachers are quitting because of this kind of behavior. That's why teachers are quitting. I don't think she's getting discipline at home. And one of the kids said to me, well, actually, she's in foster care. I said, oh no. Oh boy. Now, just because somebody's in foster care doesn't mean that they shouldn't have any discipline, that their expectations for them should be lower. But I wish I'd been more patient with her. Instead of kicking her out or having her removed, I wish I had sat down and just talked to her. I mean, she might have cursed me out. She might not have, I don't know. But I regret not just, it was like 15 minutes left of class. I regret not just sitting down with her. Maybe I should have had a cookie too. Hey, give me an Oreo. And just talking to her and seeing what the deal is with her. And I was like, wow. In all the years I've been in education, it's been like, I think this is year 17 now, been in education. There's so many times when I've had things like that happen, lessons learned when you're like, ouch, that was a mistake. Can't go back and fix it necessarily, but moving forward, I can change the way I operate. Now, that's not to say that as a substitute, if somebody's like throwing desks or cursing at me or not listening or refusing to sit down or just disrupting the class, that I shouldn't call the office and have them removed. But it's just that on those days when I'm like, oh, I can't deal with this, maybe I should have a little more patience if the behaviors are not that bad. Because her behaviors were not, she wasn't throwing the desk. She wasn't cursing me. Like, she was being defiant, disobedient, but she wasn't cursing me out. So that's just a lesson to me that I need to be more patient because we don't know where these kids are coming from. We don't know their background. Maybe those cookies were like a big deal. Maybe it was like something that she doesn't normally have, and maybe it was her way to, I don't know, make friends, become popular, or just share something that was kind of cool that she had. And again, that doesn't mean that we lower the standard and say, well, because you're in foster care, you're allowed to pass cookies around the classroom, but nobody else is. No, if this classroom has rules. But that just taught me to be more patient, and talk to these kids. See, somebody very wise said to me recently, do you think you can make a difference as a substitute teacher? And I said, no. She said, why? I said, because the thing about education, the way we make an impact is through relationships. And you cannot make a relationship with a student in 50 minutes to 1 hour, or if you're in elementary for a few hours, or in lower elementary for the whole day. Those relationships, they develop over time, over the quarter, over the semester, over the school year. If the person says they disagreed with me and believe that I can make an impact, even just for the one day that I'm there. And I've been thinking about that. And that incident made me realize that, if you just sit down and just talk to them. Because when I first started substituting, I was actually teaching. And in elementary, you really do. Elementary is very hands-on. But I realized that in middle and high school, I don't know how much these teachers actually expect you to teach the lesson or for the kids to learn. I think it's a lot more, especially as we come to the end of the semester, keeping them busy while the teacher's away. Obviously, if it's an extended absence, then learning needs to happen. So, and I think that once I understood that and got that into my thick skull, that you're not there to regulate and to teach. You're there to, basically, you're a babysitter and you're keeping them occupied and out of trouble for the most part in middle and high school. for that one day their teacher's out. But that's your opportunity now that you've figured out that you're not necessarily teaching that lesson for the day. I mean, if someone needs help, you can help them, obviously. You can explain things. But that's your opportunity now to focus on relationships, focus on talking to kids, especially the kids in the class who look like nobody's talking to them, or the kids who are acting out. Like, find out why they're acting out. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast, being in a classroom, middle school classroom with kids and having great conversations, and the kid themselves telling me, oh, I'm the worst kid in here. Oh, the teacher hates me. I'm always in trouble. And then I'm having these great conversations with them. So at least that day, they weren't labeled the bad kids. And I'm using air quotes. And that day, because I remember saying to one kid, why are you sitting over there? Oh, this is the naughty chair. She hates me, which is it's usually an exaggeration when kids say that. I'm always in trouble, blah, blah, blah. But I remember having great conversations that day with that kid and another kid who was also in a air quotes naughty chair, and being able to leave a great note for the teacher about how those boys were amazing, very smart, and had a great day. So yeah, lesson learned to me, don't focus on the teaching for as a substitute. Focus on, you have to keep them busy and give them the assignment the teachers left, but focus on talking to them and building relationships. I'm figuring out what's going on with them. And sometimes they just want to talk. Sometimes they're interested in me and where I'm from. But sometimes, find out what they do. If they're a musician, athlete, sometimes you can just look around and see what they have, and you can tell, oh, this one's in agriculture. This one's music in band. This one, I can tell by what he's wearing, what it says on his shirt. He's on yearbook staff. And just have conversations about things they're interested in. I think it makes a difference. And my prayer every day when I leave the house is to be a blessing to students, to teachers and staff members, and maybe even to parents. That's my prayer every day when I go to a new school. Let me be a blessing to somebody, to students, to teachers, to parents. And if I can be a blessing to one student and talk to them, brighten up their day, or just have somebody show interest in them and in what they're interested in, then I feel like the wise woman was right, and I can make a difference as a substitute. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Education Today. We'll be back next time with more current topics on all things education. In the meantime, you can email any questions or comments you have about the show to edtodaypodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you are listening so we can continue to expand our reach. We are listener supported, so if you're able to make a small monthly donation, you can do so by clicking the Support This Podcast link at the bottom of the show notes. Check out my blog for more about my experiences as a classroom teacher at medium.com/@SOCO. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOCO_writes. That's SOHKOR_writes. See you next time, and thank you again for listening.